Meeting is perfect.
Okay. First item on the agenda is acknowledgement, receipt of correspondence, and just previously I've been talking to Gail and Helene. We have received none. Is that correct?
I would not be receiving correspondence. It's not my thing anymore.
Okay,
Correct.
correct. Thank you. At this time, I will allow public comments on items not on the agenda with a limited time. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Okay, we have 4 items that are scheduled for 7 o'clock tonight. That is, well, 3 items. That is 4 Kings Way and 2 public hearings. The next item I have, so we will take other items out of order until 7 o'clock.
You know what?
On the, excuse me?
I'm so sorry, but I don't see 4 Kings Way on my agenda.
It's
Well, it's
the
on the
4th
agenda.
item on the agenda.
It's the 4th item on the agenda.
Okay, so I have the old, I'm sorry, I must have printed out I don't have the new agenda. Okay, good. Thank you.
So
Seriously.
the 9, just an update to the board on 9/11 Eagle Head, the A&R we discussed last week. That was going to be updated with the pervious impervious chart. Gary Gilbert vetted it. And I looked at it. The applicant brought the Mylar to the house and 4 paper copies, which I signed and moved on. So that is the update on that. The next item, while do you think we can get through this recodification roadmap in a half hour, Chris or Sarah? Should I hold off on that?
I think we can now with new information, or at least we can start it. Sure.
Okay. All right, so I'll turn it over to Chris and Sarah to give the board an update on the recodification. And I want to thank everyone for meeting last week and helping put this together.
Can I share my screen again?
All right, yeah, hold on.
So we, as everybody knows, we had 2 working sessions, Monday and Tuesday last week, and we had I think everyone except Ron and Laura at Mondays, and everyone except Ron and Gary on Tuesday, which was great to have such great participation. It was wonderful to meet in person, and so I think people are pretty up to date on where we are with the articles. We revised them. I did go through all of the articles and created a new table of contents, which is on that shared folder. We got a public notice to the Cricket and on the website, materials for the web, and are on Town Hall, which are the draft articles. And you probably haven't seen it if you're like me and you don't look at this stuff till on Monday afternoons, but we do have a draft article for the Cricket. And the late breaking news is that I had a phone call with Alan Wilson this afternoon at 5 o'clock. So let me start with that because it's changing things. Alan, this is from the last time we met. He had met with Ron and with me and asked that we keep it short and simple. So with that in mind, we knew that there was a risk that he might not think that what we came up with was short and simple, which is why we wanted to talk with him. Oh, I should also say, I didn't include in the update, Sue sent the articles to Mark Bobrowski with some specific questions. I think we're waiting to hear back on his input on some things. Today, and I talked to Alan, so there are 4 potential articles. And he thought that the one, and if you are joining us and have not been paying attention to this, I will have a quick summary of what these articles are, but I think the board knows what they are. The renumbering one he thought is in keeping with a short town meeting. The one about deleting some sections is also relatively simple. Sorry, my dog is. Sorry, hold on a second. Go away. Sorry. But he did not think that modifying sections 1 through 4 was simple. In particular, the addition of significant numbers of new definitions, he thought was complicated and might take the meeting a long time. Again, remember, he's trying to keep this meeting as short as possible for health reasons. And it will currently be, their current plan is to have it indoors. I asked him about just including the use table or using the use table to modify section 4. And his concern is that when you put that in on the warrant, it opens up uses, which are the basis of zoning, to amendments and to lots of discussion. So we'll take these one at a time in a minute. The section 12, the administration, that's less complicated, and we didn't really talk about whether he thought that was simple or not. I think he's pretty much wants to see us just do those two. But this is late breaking, and whether I think we do have some jurisdiction to decide what we want to do. This is his guidance. The other thing that he and I quickly talked about was questions for town council, especially in light of the prior discussion. The first, I did already have a question for him, which was that occurred to me in the middle of the night the other day, is can we renumber without a vote? Is it renumbering simply an administrative change? And he thinks you need town meeting vote to renumber, but certainly worth asking the question, right? If we don't want to have to go through this whole thing and find out that with a public hearing and a vote, we could just renumber it. So he's going to get back to us on that. How does renumbering affect the ZBA's applications of the bylaw? He didn't think it would affect it at all, but he was going to ask. And then I asked if we hold a hearing particularly on the modification to sections 1 through 4 and 12, does it check the box for the April town meeting? We may not want to do that because of how it might or might not affect the ZBA, particularly section 4. But since I had him, I figured, well, let's ask. And then the last question was if we hold a hearing on the article, but then pull it from the warrant, or if the town meeting is canceled, how does the fact that we've had that hearing affect the ZBA? Again, particularly relevant for section 4 mostly. Questions on that, and then we can take them one at a time.
Are you saying we need to hold a public hearing, correct, for the fall town meeting?
Oh, yes. So we have a public hearing scheduled for October 12th for the 4 articles that we have proposed. So we could modify that hearing to include only 1 of the articles or 3 of the articles.
Okay.
We can do less, we can't do more than we have posted for the public notice. And to the board, that public notice is in the zoning recodification folder that we have been using. So you can see exactly what we promised to do, which affects that parking table question, which is a nitty-gritty thing that some of us have been more worried about. So the other thing that he pointed out, this is the draft schedule from the last meeting, except this line item right here, the final warrant to the Board of Selectmen, he believes needs to be to the Board of Selectmen on October 15th, not the 25th. So just add that to our list of things. But following the public hearing, we should be able to accomplish that. I don't think that's a concern. So let's take these one at a time. On October 12th, we'll have this public hearing for the renumbering. The next steps is to have someone just review the track changes document that I haven't given to you yet, but I will tonight or tomorrow. Hold the hearing. And And then an aside that Alan thought that the new table of contents was a good handout and would be sufficient. We weren't really talking about that, but it came up. And he said we didn't really need to show a map of where each section goes. He thought that would be confusing to people, and that to just say, here's the wonderful new table of contents that a yes vote will get you on this renumbering article. So I thought that was simple, non-controversial. That's the deleted sections. This is from the working group. So the working group, actually, I'm going to go back and so I can edit this today in real time. The working group went through all of these, and the checks are those that those of us at the working group where we talked about this, and I don't remember which night it was, said, yes, we should delete reflecting antennas. Yes, we should delete the planned residential district. We wanted to come back to this one. We can do that in a minute. We should delete section 610. We wanted to come back to this one as well. I don't know why I have question marks, and these should be. We need to discuss 611. We've recommended deleting 612, and we recommended the moratorium, deleting the moratorium on marijuana. And Alan posted, recognized that there's actually a numbering problem in the existing bylaw and suggested some language to fix that when we delete it. But anyway, so so I think the two discussions on this is, and we can even take this up at the hearing, but we need to decide if there's any disagreement from the check marks that the working group recommended. That's the first thing. Decide what to do with the 6.9 and 6.11. Let me jump to 6.11. I think we actually in the working group had agreement that we should delete it, recognizing that the limits on the sewer connection remain with the NPDES permit restrictions that remain, but that that doesn't mean that 6.11 is legal. So 6.11 is not a valid zoning section with or without an NPDES sewer connection limit from DEP. I think that's what we agreed at the working session. So why don't we stop there and see if what people remember, or how we want to handle 6.11.
Any comments from the board?
Well, I have one comment.
Yeah.
I threw a lot at
I think it's
Mary had her hand up.
ironic. I think it's ironic that the citizens group is proposing a warrant that would change this anyway. I don't think either of them is a good idea, frankly, but it's just interesting that this is going to be a discussion at the town meeting no matter what, because of the citizens warrant request.
Hey, Ron, this is Mary.
Go ahead, Ms. Foley.
Yeah, so I was the one at the meeting that was still holding out on this one. I am still waiting for somebody in town, DPW, town administrator, to explain to me how the two are not related, the sewer moratorium and Article 6.11, though they might have different nuances. This was voted in and is mentioned in the sewer moratorium is obviously mentioned in the comprehensive wastewater management plan as having a sewer moratorium. So I'm fine if somebody can explain that or give me documentation. So I think we need that before we can just simply say we delete it. And then within the bylaw, it clearly states that if the bylaw shall remain in effect until repealed by a future town meeting. So I don't think it's fair to lump it into a delete section with a bunch of actual out of law bylaws. You know, this is not a legal bylaw because of the long term that it's been in there. Residents did vote this in, and so I think we need to do our due diligence to either keep it in and have it with a shortened time frame, and then give it the time that it needs to debate in public with residents if they want to take it out. But I think, yeah, lumping it into a whole delete section is not fair. And again, I still need proof that it's not linked. So those are my two concerns.
Sue, is the town waiting for some kind of blessing of this comprehensive plan? I mean, isn't that supposedly imminent and would eliminate this anyway?
The town has been hoping for that for some time. That just gives them one more documentation that says, none of this is needed, but that does not negate the fact that it's illegal and could be challenged and overruled. So the recommendation is to get rid of it, not because we're in compliance, although that is a reason to do it, but it's illegal. So that's the recommendation. So I think I don't feel strongly about whether it's separate or together, but the fact is that it is, we've been, the recommendation of our attorney is to take it out because it's illegal and it's still standing. And so.
So in fact,
I
am I correct that whether it's in the bylaw or out of the bylaw, our attorney has advised us that it's moot because of case law?
Yes, well, it cannot be, it's not, case law would not uphold this if we used it to stop a development and it was challenged. His opinion is that this would not hold up and that you could not stop a development because of this, because it's so outdated and illegal. So that's the reason, part of the reason for having his check on the bylaws is to put the town in a safer position should anything be challenged. And this is one of those instances.
Ron, this is Christine. Can I speak, please?
Mr. Licio, please.
So I think if I remember correctly, it wasn't the actual wording that was illegal. It was illegal because it was open-ended. So I think there's a few things here. I mean, putting a date certain on this would make it legal, as would removing it. So I think Mary's point is valid, removing it completely when this was voted in. I think it should be its own warrant article to remove it, so people are made aware of it. It's just not one lump thing. But to make this legal, you can put a date on it, and that changes it also. So there's two ways.
Ron?
We probably can't amend section 6.11 given what we've done with the public notice, unless we were to hold yet another public hearing. The public notice simply lists 6.11 as one of the deleted items. It does not.
Okay. So then my second question is, then if the two articles, if these two numbers are going to conflict with the citizens warrant and this, are we just creating more chaos? Should we just leave it until spring is my question. Are people going to get confused about talking about two different things, potentially the same thing? It sounds like the public could be confused.
Can I make a suggestion? Yeah. I'm going to suggest that we put it on the list of things we discuss at our hearing and then make a vote following that. And if there is maybe, if Mark Bobrowski has given us in his letter his rationale, perhaps we would be able to run that by town council to get their second opinion on the issue in light, especially in light of the citizens petition. So we don't have to decide this tonight. Anything we can decide tonight makes the hearing shorter.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Sounds
Okay.
good to me.
So town, I'm gonna just write what we're deciding here, town council.
Get Bobrowski to weigh in and then move it for a second opinion.
Okay, and then section, I think that the next step on this one that we didn't resolve was whatever Chris and I need, and somebody needs to look at this issue, this note that came from Bobrowski. So I'm going to suggest for tonight we pass over this one as well. But I will summarize this. This presentation will be in the folder. So these reds are the things we all need to think about before we before the hearing. So I can summarize those. I think does that make sense?
Just a second. I see Mary and Sue both have their hands up. So let me just, Mary, did you have opinion?
I'm sorry, that's from before.
Okay, and Sue?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you can't retroactively go in, or you can't just put a new date on an illegal bylaw to make it legal. It just is goes against the spirit of things. It is illegal. So putting a new date on an old bylaw won't do that, and I can say that with confidence.
We haven't posted to do that, so we couldn't do that in November anyway.
All right, and Mr. Gilbert? Hand up.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't agree with Mary or Christine about this. I mean, they've been speaking about it, but I feel equally strongly that we should keep it in there and try to get it removed. And I just want to ask, because we've talked about this many, many times, there may be a lack of understanding, but maybe it's just a lack of not agreeing. I think it should be removed. As far as I understand, it's illegal. And the bottom line maybe, or one of the bottom lines is, do you have a written opinion about it from town council? I thought you might. We might.
Not aware of it. I'm not aware of any.
Well, why don't we ask town council to give us a written opinion of it?
And I think that was Sarah's point.
Yep. So that's the next, if we make that the next step, and I agree, I happen to agree with you, Gary, but I think we could we could vote this after our hearing. Maybe somebody will have a strong feeling. So, okay, can I move? I'm gonna move, we're almost out of time. So maybe we have to discuss the feedback on the articles that have the significant volume, if not complexity. In the working group, we did discuss sort of using the use table to replace significant sections of section 4, and we got kind of excited about the possibility for simplifying it for the users. But Alan's pretty strong feeling is that we should table this one in its entirety. We can maybe Ron, we want to table this discussion till after our hearings, but I also was thinking, maybe just do section 1, just do the definitions. You know, I think we can, we certainly have the authority to propose articles. I mean, Alan is not this is a courtesy that we're engaging with him, right? I believe.
Sarah, I've got a question, a clarification.
Mhm.
He seems to be wanting to shy away from the use table because he thinks that even though we're keeping the existing uses and just putting them in a table, that somebody may want to modify some aspects of existing uses.
Yep.
It seems to me that's easy to deal with. We go forward with what we're doing. If somebody wants to modify something of substance, we just say, okay, that part, let's readdress it later. Let's keep what we've got. We're not changing the law. We're just changing the format of the law. And in the spring, they could, if someone's got something of substance and the planning board agrees, we'll bring it to town meeting in the spring to change whatever use in whatever way.
I think that that's a reasonable provision, but the fact of the matter is, any citizen could make an amendment to our motion and change a use in a zone from allowed to not allowed. Or the other way around. It would be within you could amend that use table to allow
have-
nothing.
Wouldn't
They'd have
that
to
require a
vote at
public
town
hearing?
meeting, You know, you're not going to jump in there and throw out an idea and everybody's going to agree with you. That's not so likely.
But we would be having a public hearing, Chris, on the table. We would be saying, we're reformatting it, we're putting in this new table of the existing uses. I don't know, that's a question we could ask, but
And similarly, if I could jump, because we're running out of time, but the definitions, I thought we should approach it the way Bobrowski suggested. Propose them as a package. If somebody, if it becomes a discussion item on 3 or 6 of the uses or whatever, the definitions, they could be holds put on them and they could be discussed further in the Springtown meeting, but the package could go forward. I mean, this is what Mark Bobrowski has suggested as a way of approaching things. And I think we should try to, in as much as we can, present things as a package. And if need be, you pull out a few items.
that is for us to decide, for sure. That's an option, is to put forward it all or put forward just the definitions. It is 7 o'clock, Ron, maybe, do you want to come back to this?
Yeah, we can come back to this. I wanna.
Okay.
Let me just. Is the agenda up? Are you seeing the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I would like to now, Mr. Stump, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. I'd like to open up the A&R on 4 Kings Way, High Ledge Estates. And Paul Stump is here for the applicant. And I also believe Mr. Gilbert has vetted this A&R. So Mr. Stump, if you can give the board an overview of what you're doing here. I don't know if you want to
Sure.
put it up on screen or.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to put anything on the screen,
Okay.
but basically, I bought a property next to number 8 Kings Way about the same time they bought theirs. We've known each other for a number of years. And there is a piece of land that is sort of off away from the house towards Summer Street. And it really doesn't bring any value to number 4. So I've agreed to transfer that to number 8. If you're familiar with that property, a lot of the property is down the hill towards Summer Street. And this would give them a, I don't know, a yard space, I guess. I mean, that's basically the gist of it. It's about 5,300 square feet. And it'd just be very useful yard space for them. It's what's referred to as Parcel A in this drawing plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gilbert, have you looked at this and have any opinions?
I spoke with the surveyor. It's been a couple of weeks. I don't remember who I spoke with, but my understanding is this is basically just a lot line adjustment of 2 legal lots, and it's not rendering either lot to be non-compliant. So it's just like so many other A&Rs we've had recently. It's a lot line adjustment. So I recommend that we endorse it.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to endorse And Helene, can someone make that motion? And Helene or Gail, what's the A&R number?
824, this is Helene. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
824.
So I'll make a motion to endorse A&R 824 at 4 Kingsway. The plan prepared for Paul Stump on September 14th, 2021 by Sullivan Engineering Group, scale 1 inch is 40 feet.
Is there a second?
Second,
I'll second
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes,
Mr. Gilbert,
yes.
Mr. Olney,
it. Yes,
and Ms. Tenney.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Stump, it's approved. I don't have the Mylar here, but I'll have to get it, sign it, and we can make arrangements for you to pick it up with also paper copies.
All right. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right, thank you. Okay. Just a little bit of ground rules before we open the public hearing. And thank everyone in the public for attending this Zoom meeting. Little background, the role of the planning board. It's a 7-member board elected for 3-year terms. We're charged with overseeing compliance with state statutes and local signing bylaws, land use planning by creation, amendment of new and existing local bylaws. My role as a chair would be to kind of guide through the process as a kind of a referee or an umpire. The first application has to do with documentation for a special permit under section 7.5 and 4.4.10 of our zoning bylaws. The applicant will thoroughly explain the technical details of his application, answer questions from planning board members, town planner, and the public. He'll respond to requests for information, modification, or amendments to the application. Persuade planning board that the application meets statutory and zoning requirements. The planning board members will review the applicant's documentation, raise questions, make observations and comments, request clarifications or additional information. If necessary, engage third-party technical experts to review the applicant's documentation at their expense, suggest possible application plan and modifications, and vote on whether the application has met zoning and statutory bylaws. The role of the audience is to observe and participate in the public hearings, present your observations, opinions, or documentations to support your point of view, present testimony of technical experts if necessary, request clarifications, suggest modifications or changes to the application. These hearings are all documentation is open to the public. Tonight is a first step. The applicant will present general information supporting his application. If necessary, future planning board meetings will drill down and focus on specific technical, environmental, public safety, and legal issues. In general, no decisions are made without in-depth public planning board review and public input. After the applicant's presentation, planning board's member will be first to ask questions, make observations, and seek clarifications. Once the planning board members have finished with their questions, comments, the public will be invited to participate with questions, comments, and testimony. Public may submit questions via Zoom during the hearing process. These will be compiled, read, and answered during the hearing. Just as guiding, please have respect for all participants, whether you disagree or not. No negative personal innuendos or attacks will be tolerated. Please keep your remarks focused on specific topic issues being discussed. And please refrain from repetition of questions asked or comments made previously, so everyone has the opportunity to present different points of view and or information. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing on the special permit for a float and pier at 9 Tux Point Road. The public hearing has been duly noticed and advertised in the Cricket as follows, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 11. The Manchester by the Sea Planning Board will hold a public hearing on September 27th at 7 p.m. virtually via Zoom to consider the application of Jeffrey Caneb for a small special permit under Section 7.5 and 4.1.10 of the zoning bylaws for an existing float and ramp system previously approved by the Manchester Conservation Commission and Harbor Master and installed in 2019 at Tux Point Road, Assessors Map 22, Lot 20, Zoning District E, in order to file a mass waterways license under Chapter 91. As required in Section 7.8 of the zoning bylaw, the application and plan were sent to on August 10th with a request for comments to the Conservation Commission, DPW, Board of Health, Harbor Master, and Selectmen. The Conservation Administrator's email response dated August 16th is as follows and is made part of the record. Conservation Commission issued a COC in September 2019. Attached a copy of a plan of the as-built plan on 8/15 approved by the Concom. The floating and gangway are seasonal. There also are perpetual conditions that run with the property. The perpetual ongoing conditions listed in the order as follow. The applicant shall hire a registered professional engineer to monitor the stability of the proposed landing gangway float system, provide annual reports to MCC for the first 2 years and every 5 years after. Should any part of the system fail or seasonal storm-related float hauling out process fail, the engineer shall provide alternate solutions to remedy the failures to the MCC prior to implementing or amending any repair. This condition shall survive in perpetuity beyond the issuance of the certificate of compliance. Any proposed alteration to the buffers and or coastal resources on the site shall require express permission from the MCC through a special request of determination of applicability or notice of intent application. Should the landing fail, the owner shall file a notice of intent for construction on coastal bank. The procedures listed in operation and maintenance procedures shall be followed. Watercraft should not be allowed to ground out at low tide. It is the responsibility of the applicant owner to make realtors and subsequent owners aware of these perpetual conditions, and these conditions shall survive in perpetuity beyond the issuance of a certificate of compliance. With that in mind, I would have the applicant or his representative please address the board with a brief application.
Hi, this is Kurt Young from Lucas Environmental. We did the filing for this from a little bit of a historical perspective, and you already provided much of it, Mr. Chairman, so I won't reiterate that. But Mr. Kane was issued a certificate of compliance for a float, seasonal float. In 2019, he constructed that, installed it. It was in place in the season for 2020 and 21. In 2020, he was thinking of having more of a long-term permit for the pier, so he didn't miss a year filing for the Section 10A permit from the Harbor Master. So he asked us to put together a filing for a Chapter 91. Part of that, the first step in that actually was the filing of an environmental notification form with MEPA because we were filing for a Chapter 91 permit. And I think Sue Brown, soon after that, when she had a copy to review, called us up and said, by the way, you need to file under the planning board for a special permit. And we gnashed that around a little bit, and turned out these were some sections of the zoning bylaw that you're even considering this evening to modify. I don't know whether you'll modify these sections, but regardless, we wanted to move ahead and file for a special permit so that we can complete the Chapter 91 process. We have not filed the Chapter 91. We'll file that after we get permission from you folks to move forward under a special permit in that regard. As indicated by the chair, Conservation Commission's issued a certificate of compliance for the dock and pier. It's in place. It's very functional. I do have some plans of that, Mr. Chairman, if you can allow me to share screen.
Second.
Hurry up. Okay. Can you see the plan?
Not yet, Mr. Young.
Let's see. Where did we miss it here?
You have to click share, I think. Is that
Thought I hit it.
bottom?
Well, I still have control.
Hold on a second, I'll be right back.
I still have control, maybe.
I gave him co-host. Let me see.
Me in. I don't know why it won't, hold on a moment. Let's see if we can get a. For some reason, it disconnected me.
Sarah, do you have his presentation or application? Maybe if he tells you what he's looking for?
I was looking for the site plan that is attached to the application.
Yeah, I can, is it the as-built?
Yes.
Yeah, I can just open that.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Now I'm trying to
Yes.
get back in. They're being a little difficult here to get back in.
Can you see that?
Okay, now I'm back in. Apologize for that.
Sorry, I'm sharing my screen. Is that showing?
Yes, Sarah. We see
Okay,
it.
I will zoom in.
So we have a float, a 24 by 12 foot float located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And that's attached to a 50-foot long pier, or I should say ramp, that extends out to the float. And there's a concrete pad at the shoreline that's anchored to. It's seasonal, so this is during high tide. The ramp is removed, the float is removed. They're taken into the harbor now to be stored and then reinstalled during the springtime. Storm conditions, you read a number of perpetual conditions, and we do have the obligation to remove the float and ramp during extreme conditions. As soon as the harbor master notices that there's an extreme storm coming, it's taken out, along with a lot of other floats and ramps on the harbor. From the standpoint of its location, we didn't want to go too far out. The harbor master had specifically requested that we not have any piers or piles put in to support the ramp. So that sort of limited the distance from the shoreline that we would put it at. And he didn't want us to get too close to the channel, which is about 200 feet offshore from the shoreline at high tide. And we have been working with the harbor master to make sure that we're totally compliant with that. And he's, as I say, been issuing section 10A permits for the last couple of years. The site is sort of shallow, so at low tide it does lose water during about 20% of the tidal cycle. There's less than a foot of water in here, so we have the float suspended on posts on basically short sections of 4x4 and 6x6s to keep it up off the bottom itself. So it does impact the bottom at about 6 different locations, but it's relatively benign. We tried to minimize the size. It's used, quite frankly, mostly for paddle boards right now, the new vessel, and kayaks. It does get accessed occasionally by Mr. Canev's outboard motorboat. So I think it's about a 22-foot boat. He can get there during high tide and mid tide, but it can't be left there during low tide, obviously. It's anchored with helical anchors were the initial proposal, but we had to go to pyramidal anchors because we have a very definite rock substrate to work with under the sand veneer in that area. Some of you may be familiar with the very broad sandy bottom that exists along that bluff area. The pier and the float area are accessed by a rather circuitous and steep cleft in the rock ledge from the house up above, but it is accessible from the yard of the Canop's property. It's also accessible along the side of the shoreline during low tide. As far as compatibility, I think with your criteria for the special permit, it meets the sort of minimum size requirements that we had for the use, and it doesn't impair any abutting properties from being used. Suitability of the site, as I say, it's about 80% of the tidal cycle. It has a foot of water at it, so you can get a kayak in during a great deal of the tidal cycle. Structure has been approved by the Conservation Commission and the Manchester Harbor Master. As far as impact on traffic flow and safety, it's minimally intrusive. It doesn't extend out more than 50 feet from the shoreline as far as the ramp is concerned, a little bit more for the float. We're avoiding the deeper water condition. We're not putting any vertical structures in that would be permanent. They would be there during the wintertime. So we've avoided that at the Harbor Master's request. Impact on the neighborhood visual character from an aesthetic perspective, I think it fits in with the other uses in the area of the project. It is in place right now. It looks rather nice. And maybe we could try to share screen again. I can give you some photos of that. You can try that again. You'll see, probably get kicked off again, but let's see. Does that show on your screen?
Not yet.
Not yet, huh? What? Well, I'm going to give up anyways.
Doesn't like outsiders.
I have to apologize. I'm not sure quite why this isn't letting me in, but it's not pretty convincingly has got me blocked out. So rather than lose you again, what I'll do is terminate my discussion. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them. As I say, there's no sewage disposal, no water use or drainage to speak of, nor the utilities, wildlife habitat, other natural resource issues. I think have been pretty well resolved with the Manchester Conservation Commission. There are no rare species associated with the project. With that, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to address them.
Any board members first have any questions for the applicant? Sarah?
You're muted, Sarah.
When you started your presentation, you indicated that there was a certificate of compliance prior to construction, which I'm sure you didn't quite mean to say. But does the project have a certificate of compliance from the Manchester Conservation Commission now?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Laura, you have your hand up. You're muted. Laura, you're muted.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
My question was the revegetation plan that was cited in finding number 1 with the order of conditions. Has that been closed out to the satisfaction of the Conservation Commission?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the board have any questions? Sue, any questions from the town planner?
No.
Anyone from the public?
I think Ann Harrison had her hand up.
Ann, you have a question? You're muted.
Sorry, not a question. I am a neighbor and I support this application.
Okay.
Ron, this is Mary. I had a
Mary,
quick
go ahead.
question.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I didn't, is the harbor master on the call so he could give a brief recap of what he found?
Brian, are you on?
I checked the participants earlier, Mr. Chairman. I didn't see him on.
I don't see him on, Mary.
Was there Was there a letter in the packet? I didn't see a letter from the harbor master.
I believe the final document in that submittal was the 2002 10A renewal form from the harbor master.
2002?
Yeah, for 2000. Well, that's what that's the heading of the document is. It was filed in July, so I assume it's for a permit for next year. And your fiscal year may run
22, it
in the
says.
calendar year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had one more, Ron,
Yep, go ahead.
regarding the safety for the harbor master. Mr. Young, you talked about how when a storm is approaching, the facility would be pulled out of the water. How is that completed, and what
Yeah.
the harbor master say about that?
Yeah, there's, and I have to apologize, I don't recall the fellow's name that works down in town there, but he's tasked with the job of covering floats and ramps during storm conditions, and basically, storing them for the winter time or during storm conditions. And he worked with us for a while to assure that in fact we could get it off, and that he would in fact give it priority, because it is out in the, I won't say the mouth of the harbor access, but it's out there in that direction. And the commission was concerned about that, and I think justifiably so. And so it's sort of at the top of his list for retrievals, and he's committed to removing that in any storm condition that the harbor master warrants that people should remove their floats. And that's by contract, I might add. There's been a contract established for that specific purpose with the Canebs.
And the harbor master was satisfied with that as far as the safety of the structure in storms.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so without any further questions, what I would like to do is have a motion to continue the public hearing to October 12th, at which time we will render a decision. This will allow us time to write a decision and vote on it. Would you be able to come back on the 12th, Mr. Young?
Yes, I can. That would work fine.
Ron?
In the
Yes.
interim, would it be of assistance to the board if I submit a couple of photographs that I had intended to put up on my screen, but apparently that's not going to work tonight. But if
you could submit them to Gail Hunter, and she can post them on our SharePoint site under your information, that would be great.
I'll do that. I think it'll help the board have an appreciation of the quality of the workmanship and the location.
Okay, Helene, or Gail, as far as process goes, we have a certain window of time once the decision is written, correct? Once the public hearing is closed?
You have, this is Helene.
Yes.
And once the public hearing is closed, you have a considerable amount of time. However, once you vote, you have 14 days to have it filed with the town clerk, but that really is only 10 days because the meeting's on Monday and the 12th is on Tuesday, and there's 4 holidays in the middle.
So we will vote the decision on October 12th.
Yeah,
I
you
believe.
can, on the 12th, you can then close the public hearing on the 12th and vote the decision. If you'd like me to, I will have a draft decision for you. If you want someone else to do it, you can ask them, but I am prepared to write a draft decision for you.
That would be great, unless the board objects. Okay. So I'd like to have a roll call vote on a motion to continue. Well, I'd like to have a motion to continue the public hearing to October 12th.
So moved.
Is it seconded?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Does the applicant agree? You have to have that.
Yes, I
Absolutely.
think he did agree.
Okay.
Ron, I have a question on this.
Yes, Gary.
Why can't we just vote, write a decision, and file it?
I think because of the timing of it, from what I'm hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Helene, but we have,
No, you're
10 days.
absolutely correct. You have, it's going to take you, you
it's not
want to
gonna
see,
work.
well, you want to see the decision before you file it. And if you vote tonight, and then you have until the day of, 2 weeks from today, you have until the holiday of October 11th or the day following. And it doesn't give you time. I mean, you don't have the 2 weeks. You need 2 weeks.
So it's a process issue, from what I
It's a
understand.
process issue, it's a timing issue. And if I write the decision and you don't like it, there's no way that you can change it in time to file it without getting an extension. So one way or another, you're gonna have some kind of a continuation. You might as well just do it now, which is what is usually the process, or has been for the last God knows how many years.
Yeah, it's kind of way, I mean, so a motion's been made and seconded.
Can I just ask one other question, Ron? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
any
is
more
that our
discussion?
first
Yeah.
special permit first, a couple of us. To Gary's point, the alternative, I think, would have been for someone to have, in reviewing the plan, to have come prepared with a decision that we could have voted.
Correct.
So in the future, once we have a template, because I haven't seen one, because I haven't done one of these before, you know, what seems to be a simple matter like this, we could prepare the decision after reviewing the plan prior to the meeting, and then it could be expedited.
Be true. I agree. That's a good idea, but not all of these are easy. You know, some would require a site walk, and there may be other things that would go into the decision in a more complicated application, would be my thought. Okay, so a motion's been made and seconded to continue the public hearing. The applicant has agreed to October 12th. I'll take a roll call vote to
At 7 o'clock, you have to put the time in.
at 7 o'clock
Thank you.
PM.
Thank you.
Ron, we have our public hearing for the zoning, so should we make it at 6:45 for this matter?
Okay, good point. Why don't we make it at 6:45? So to reiterate, a motion's been made and seconded to continue the public hearing to October 12th at 6:45 PM. Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert,
Yes.
Mr. Olney,
Yes,
and Ms. Tenney.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See
Have a
you
short
next, see you
evening.
in a couple. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Oh, good. Goodbye.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on the special permit application for a site plan approval for the Cornerstone Church. Public hearing notice has been duly, the public hearing notice has been duly noticed and advertised in the Cricket as follows, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 11, the Manchester by the Sea Planning Board will hold a public hearing on September 27th at 7 PM. Virtually via Zoom to consider the application of Cornerstone Church for a site plan approval with special permit under sections 7.5 and 6.9 of the zoning bylaw. As greater than 10 parking stalls are proposed at 189, 191, and 193 School Street, Assessors Map 38, lots 25, 15, and zoning District A. Under section 7.8 of the zoning bylaw, the application and plan was sent on September 1st with the request for comments to the Conservation Commission, DPW, Board of Health, Police Chief, Fire Chief, and Selectmen. The boards and departments have 35 days in which to respond. At this time, we received 2 responses, which are made a part of this record. No response has been received from the other boards and/or departments. Fire Captain Todd Bigger responded on September 16th. The preliminary review of the site plan meets code requirements of lane width, grade, and emergency access. As the building plan is developed, more details will be available for hydrant and fire department connection. Police Chief Todd Fitzgerald responded on September 7th. I've reviewed the plans. They were submitted for the property referenced above. At this time, my only public safety concern that would pertain to the police department is the sight lines in either direction for the proposed access road to the property off Mill Street. It appears to me that vehicles traveling in a southerly direction on Mill Street, taking a left turn into the property, might have an obstructed view with oncoming traffic. In parentheses, vehicles enter onto Mill Street from School Street. As always, I would be available for any future questions that arise. Inasmuch as there is an entire section of the application on sewage, I would like to hear from the DPW during this hearing. Inasmuch as the application is a church, the application is protected by the Dover Amendment, which is under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 3. No zoning, I'll read in part, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit, regulate, or restrict the use of land or structures for religious purposes or for educational purpose on land owned or leased by a religious sect or denomination or by a nonprofit educational corporation, provided, however, that such land or structure may be subject to reasonable regulations concerning the bulk and height of structures and determining yard sizes, lot areas, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage requirements. The Dover Amendment also reads, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall exempt land or structures from floodplain or wetlands regulations established pursuant to these general laws. So at this time, I would like to ask the applicant or his representative to please address the board with a brief presentation. Reminder to the audience that the previous mentioned rules apply.
Yep. Good evening, board members. Mr. Chair, for the record, thank you for the introduction. For the record, my name is David Robinson. I'm a civil engineer with Allen and Major Associates. I'm here this evening to present an exciting new project in town regarding the Cornerstone Church, which seeks to construct a new church at 189, 191, and 193 School Street. That's located directly across from the exit 50 on-ramp to 128. And they do have some signs out there currently indicating as such. Here with me this evening, representing the applicant, the Cornerstone Church, is Mr. Alden Drake. He's been heading up the development team for the proposed project. Also with me from Allen and Major Associates is a senior project manager, Carlton Quinn. As the chairman described, this application is for site plan review and special permit due only to the fact that we have greater than 10 parking stalls proposed on site. In fact, we have 98 total stalls proposed. It should be noted that this project is being permitted by right. No variances or waivers are currently being requested. So the purpose of the project is to construct a new 9,850 square foot approximately church with a sanctuary and fellowship hall at 189 to 183 School Street. There are 3 parcels under common ownership, which are currently owned by the church, and they do use it occasionally. And they're also looking to phase out a second building, approximately 3,900 square feet at the rear of the site at a future time in the project. But we do want to permit that now, though it will not be built. As I mentioned, the site is located directly across the off-ramp from exit 50. It's pretty high visibility. The zoning is Residence A, and the church use is allowed by right per section 4.1.3 of the zoning bylaw, church and related use. There's also section 4.1.4, which allows by right educational use as long as it's not conducted for profit. So the existing site, maybe we should, am I able to pull up some plans?
Hold on, I will give you.
Or at least that
I will give you
color,
that.
the color presentation plan. Can I share?
You should have a sharing ability.
Okay. Here we go. Share. Can everybody see that?
Yes,
You can.
yes.
Okay, good to know. So this is the site. It's shaded in green, hatched in green here. So let's go over the existing conditions first. It's a largely cleared site. You can see the tree line here. The site does extend back here. It gets very steep in topography in the rear area here. But we're seeking to develop this area along School Street and just to the south of Mill Street here. The existing site's just over 3 acres. There are some bordering vegetated wetlands, which were flagged to the north here. And we do have a application into Conservation Commission for a notice of intent for the minor grading and landscaped areas that are going to encroach upon the local buffers, as well as the 100-foot state buffer. Existing on the site, there is currently a 3-inch PVC sewer force main, which collects sewage from 3 streets to the rear of the site on Mill Street, 3 houses to the rear of the site on Mill Street back here. The force main currently comes up through a 30-foot wide easement, ties into an existing sewer manhole here, and then shoots out to an existing force main in School Street. We're currently proposing to keep some of the existing force main and then reworking it to handle sewage from the proposed church and the proposed potential outbuilding in the corner here. So these lines are the sewer lines tying into the existing sewer manhole, which will go to a new sewer manhole, and which will tie into a force main, which will ultimately discharge into an existing sewer manhole out here at School Street. Regarding the dimensional setbacks, we do have the zoning table up here. We appear to meet all of the zoning setbacks. We don't need any variances or anything. And I'm sure that plays into what the chairman described at the beginning there with chapter 40A. So we don't need any variances with regard to that. We have a 60-foot setback from the property line at School Street. And as I mentioned before, we're proposing 98 stalls on site. So we decided for the drainage for this site that we would go with a really nice low impact development, which we know that communities typically look for. This gray shaded area, the majority of the parking down here in the front turnaround area is all going to be pervious pavement. That's pavement that basically has no fines in it. So it collects rainwater, and there's a reservoir system below that to allow it to recharge and exfiltrate into the ground naturally to recharge the water table, which will eventually make its way out to the wetlands. In the rear here, this is overflow parking. The church currently rarely ever sees more than 60 cars at a time. So, but this, you may have more. So we propose some overflow parking in the back here. This is proposed to be concrete pavers infilled with grass. So again, that low impact development and the ability to soak up rainwater and infiltrate it back into the ground. Additional utilities on site are your standard electricity, telephone, and cable, which will come in from School Street. Water and gas coming right up here between the 2 buildings. I think that kind of covers the utilities. The landscaping, we've designed it to meet all of the landscape regs. We have some nice shade trees around the parking lot, some nice plantings in the front. The church is going to have a steeple, which could be up to 60 feet tall. But the front of the building is basically 32 feet to the top of the rafters in the front of the building. We did also submit a traffic report. I'm sure that you had a chance to review that. And we also submitted a rendering which I believe was shown at the beginning there. But I'll leave it on this plan for now. I think this is a good plan that kind of summarizes up the entire project. Oh, also regarding the police officer's comment on the site drive here, we did perform a traffic analysis. It was done by Vanessa and Associates, and they certified in one of the first summary points that there was sufficient sightline distance for left or right hand turning cars into the driveway here. So, you know, it might be a little close, but we did have a traffic report done that was not requested at the preliminary hearing. We went out and did that on our own, and he has certified that the sight line distances are currently acceptable. And that traffic report was submitted with the submission. One last thing I should mention is the grading for the site. The site is largely a fill site. If you go out there today and you stand on School Street, you're up at kind of a high point. Then there's a kind of a field that drops down quickly from School Street here to kind of a meadow area here. So we will be filling and raising the site a little bit. And there's also a fairly steep slope in the back here that we'll be cutting into. And we'll have a slope in the back here, and smaller slopes along here leading down to the property line. And additionally, we did go out and do some test pits on site. We did several dozen or so or more test pits on site, which were included as part of the drainage report. And we found all favorable results for the proposed drainage system, the pervious pavement, with regards to water table being down low enough, suitable soil textures to infiltrate water as needed for the design. And the last low impact development we have is a small rain garden over here. Kind of acts like an overflow for the pervious pavement, and it also helps to water these plants and promote evaporation and transpiration. So we do have a lot of low impact design with regards to our drainage on site. I think that kind of sums it up. At this point, I'd like to open up the floor to the board members with any questions that they may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Laura? I think you have your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Ron. Good evening, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Drake. I have a couple of clarifying questions, and then I have a number of observations. Can you speak first about the pedestrian circulation and the bike circulation, how you're providing for that for bike parking, and where is the accessible entrance to the building?
So I'll start with the accessibility. The accessible entrances, if you look here, you can see grayscaled in the back, these handicap parking stalls, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6 accessible stalls that we provide. And this side of the building is right up at grade. So we're providing an accessible access point right up near,
from the parking lot only.
from the parking lot. It's
not from School
here.
Street.
Not from School Street. That wouldn't be. Actually, no, we do also have this connection at School Street.
Right.
This is going to have landscaping on either side. And this will provide ADA access to the street here.
If you're
Oh,
using
no, I'm
your,
sorry.
Where do you
I'm
get in
sorry.
the door, though?
I'm
from-
sorry, this is not accessible.
Okay, because I
Apologies.
see steps on that side of the church.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that is not an accessible connection.
if you're using
So-
your, excuse me for interrupting, if you're using your pointer, I'm not seeing it. Maybe you're using it on the wrong screen.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay.
And bike parking and circulation, can you talk
Oh,
more
my
about that? And then I'll have a number of
Oh,
observations.
here we go. How's that? Can you see that?
Yeah,
We see
Okay.
the image. Do you have a
And-
pointer?
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
See the
Yeah.
pointer now? Sorry, I
Yeah.
paused the sharing accidentally. I apologize. So the accessible parking is at the rear here. And this is right up at grade to the building. This would not be an accessible connection from the walkway.
So I have a number of observations. I think there's some, the strengths of this design are that the church is fairly close to School Street, and it is, architecturally it's addressing the street. And you've also spoken to the stormwater BMPs, such as the pervious paving and the rain gardens. They're proposed to capture and treat the 100-year storm. So I think those are good things. Pedestrian connection to School Street is provided sort of, but I have to say it's an afterthought here. I think the plan is quite auto oriented. And given that the church is such an important community use, and you're drawing people from the neighborhood, I think giving some more thought to people walking or riding bikes up School Street and wanting to connect to the church, there should be an accessible entry onto School Street, and you should be able to walk with your stroller or your walker or whatever you're doing and get in the front door without having to go down to the parking lot. I think this is too auto-focused right now. And the grading of that little pathway connector, which is fairly narrow to the street at School Street, is not shown on the grading plan. So it seems to be a bit of an afterthought. I wonder about the amount of parking, given the footprint on the site, that the expansion, the overflow parking is quite large, and you've said they don't expect to need it very often. And I wonder about if you could, shrink that footprint a bit. You might avoid having to encroach on the buffer to the wetlands. You might also be able to avoid cutting into the slope. You're showing a 1-to-1 riprap rock slope at the back of the site that's as high as apparently 30 feet tall in some areas. So just a comment about, thinking about, can you shrink the footprint at all? And one thing that might help you shrink it would actually be reconsidering whether you need a paved auto road that encircles the entire building versus eliminating that road, pushing the building closer to School Street, making it feel like a welcoming pedestrian entry that's accessible to everyone. And, it's not a high rise, so it seems like you could probably eliminate the route around the building, which in any case for drop off is not getting you to an accessible entry anyhow. So I question the need for that. And then I just wanted to make a comment about the trees. I appreciate that you are revegetating the site to some degree and showing trees. I'd encourage you to think about where trees really do the most benefit for people. And those are the kind of walking corridors and the parking lot areas. So, planting street trees along School Street, back of the sidewalk on your property, would really improve that area to make a shaded pedestrian walk. The trees up against the building are ornamental, but they're not actually providing much benefit. And then if you were to widen that median in the parking lot as well, you could potentially plant some more trees, which would shade that paving and shade the cars. And so I think heat island is a real issue that we need to be thinking about. And the last thing I would say is the rain garden also potentially has possibilities to be more of an amenity and less of a kind of engineered structure that is planted with lawn. And so, you might kind of naturalize that and make the project kind of fit into the landscape a bit better and provide, that rain garden could be quite a nice benefit, could be planted with pollinator habitat. And so I would encourage you to think a little bit more about the kind of performance aspects of the landscape plan. That's a lot. So I'm definitely supportive of, a use on the street that is bringing the community in. You're obviously serving a need. I just like to see it oriented more towards pedestrian access, bicycle access, and think more about performance-based landscape and the overall footprint of the pavement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the applicant? Otherwise, Gary Gilbert, you have your hand up.
Yeah, is the rather than the engineer, is the owner's rep, is the owner here or the applicant himself?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Alden Drake. I'm a member of Cornerstone Church. I'm heading up the team that put together this site plan with the engineer's assistance. And my home residence is at 53 Pleasant Street in Wenham, Massachusetts. I'm not a resident in Manchester.
I've got a question for you, sir.
Yes.
You came before us for some preliminary comments, and
yes.
they don't seem to have been responded to. And I'm wondering, is there a programmatic reason why you couldn't accommodate what some of us felt, or I know I felt, were some reasonable requests about a modification in the design?
Well, if I remember correctly, Mr. Gilbert, that meeting was on June 14th. And I believe that virtually all of the planning board's preliminary recommendations were agreeable to us, and they're reflected in the site plan that's before you tonight. We did not get into a detailed architectural drawings and plans because we're not at that point yet, but we did on our own choose to have an architect do a rendering, which you've all seen. That rendering is not necessarily an architectural drawing for us, but it is it's a consensus of what the members of the building team at the church have found most favorable and appealing in terms of a design. We did put in the, I'm sorry?
I just wanted to make some points about the design.
Could I just touch on the other issues also before?
Dr. Ron.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Drake, finish up.
We did put in the pedestrian walk. We did put in the concrete paver blocks. We did put in a sidewalk from the front entrance to the sidewalk on School Street. We did narrow, we significantly narrowed the circumferential driveway. I think it was 2 directions before, and now it's a 1 direction. There might have been some other recommendations from that June 14th meeting, but everything I remember and that the team remembers from that June 14th meeting, we responded to very favorably. We were excited. We think those were great, helpful comments.
Mr. Gilbert?
Well, some of the points that were made before, and I'll restate them here, and they're a lot in line with what Laura was mentioning. But just in terms of the built form of this church, to wrap this church with the ring road is really counter to the word is typology in the architecture world. It's the counter to how churches are built in our town. It's a more suburban approach, automobile-oriented approach to a church. And all of our other churches reinforce the whole idea of walkability, what a village actually is, with sidewalks where people could walk down a sidewalk and walk down a walkway and get into the front door of a church. And there's no reason that I can come up with why you would have a ring road here. My suggestion would be to eliminate the ring road and to pull the church closer to the street and have a pull-off like you've got for 2 or 3 cars right in front of the church. Now, I reviewed this with the police chief, and he said it's always nice to have a ring road, but he agreed you don't, by code or law, need one, if I can paraphrase him. The police chief did not see any reason not to have a pull-off and widening School Street in the northbound direction where the speeds are slower. And it would, if you think about it in terms of safety-wise, if you need to get somebody out of that building quickly, it's a few steps from the front door under my version to get them into an ambulance, then to have to turn on Mill Street, turn again to go in the parking lot, turn again to get to the back door and swing around and leave, etc. It's actually quicker. But I feel a lot of people have been talking about the look and feel of our town and our precious village, especially with this housing project we're confronted with in town. And I think this is right along in lines with preserving the look and feel of our town, to have a walkable church as a new member of our community. And this is really, I think, in terms of urban design or built form, it's sort of antithetical to how our village has evolved over the years. The other virtues of not having the ring road is you pull the building closer to the street and you have more preserved, well, I don't want to call it forest, but woodlands on the eastern part of the site, and potentially would decrease that riprap wall that Laura was mentioning. Yeah, I just really don't think it reinforces the fabric of our town or encourages people to walk there. And I don't see any reason not to do it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Through the 7 to 8 months that members of the Cornerstone Church building team met to talk about how the site could be used and how it could help our congregation, we, almost without exception, we all feel that a one-directional driveway around the church is necessary and helpful, because we have a lot of families with younger children, as well as senior citizens, and coming together in a car, it is a convenience, it's a time saver for, and I guess it's a safety factor as well, for a car to be able to pull up at the front door in a pull-off area and let people out. You know, we also have students coming from Gordon College and other universities nearby. And, you know, they'll come 2 or 3 in a car, and it's best if they can unload at the front door and get out right there safely on the sidewalk. And then the driver of the car can go down and park in the rear. So primarily because of families with children, we feel strongly that that driveway, one way around the building, is really essential. I also had a conversation with Fire Department Captain Todd Bigger shortly after, I think it was in early July. And he made the comment that the building code, because of the square footage of the building, falls under the commercial code, and that the commercial code requires a driveway. Now, whether it does or doesn't, I'm not an expert enough to know. That was his comment to me, but I'm simply saying that the church feels it's necessary to have a one-lane driveway around the church so that we can drop off in front. There's also a question about street noise. All the times we've been on the property, the northbound traffic on School Street accelerates at an incredible rate of speed to go over the overpass over Route 128. And the engine noise and the tire noise, and oftentimes the near collisions that happen from cars pulling off the exit 50 onto School Street, whether they're heading north or whether they're heading south. There's a lot of near misses there. So we did not want to have a pull-off from School Street to our front door. For safety, convenience, coming in off of Mill Street was far better for our needs and purposes.
Great, thank you. Chris, Christina, Sarah, Mary, any comments, questions?
I have some comments, Sarah.
Sarah?
I do appreciate, I do think you responded to our comments about the pervious pavement and then the in the parking areas. So I do appreciate that attention. But I do echo Laura and Gary's comments. I think what's going to happen without a pull off is people are going to pull off on the side of School Street there and drop their kids off and then zoom off to 128. So I think you're going to get that drop off for people who are dropping people off, no matter whether you have a pull off or not, is my guess. That's what happens. People drop off at the closest point. So I think you're going to have dropping off.
The traffic is sometimes.
I think it's a bad idea to let
terribly
without a
unsafe.
drop off there,
Yes.
or even with one, unless
Yeah.
you have really strong enforcement. You're going to have people dropping off people on School Street. It's just going to happen. That's the first. So that's my opinion.
My opinion, Sarah, with all due respect, my opinion is completely opposite. Nobody in their right mind would pull to the side of the road in the breakdown lane on School Street, open their doors and let their children out if there's an alternative. And that's why we want that driveway around the building. It's incredibly dangerous to come to a stop on any of the paved lanes on School Street.
No, you're talking about the shoulder, Christina.
Yeah, I'm talking about the shoulder.
Getting off
I
on
think,
off the.
But anyway, that's my opinion. That we'll do it, whether it's safe or not. The second thing is, I agree with Gary. I believe that the commercial code, if there's the requirement is for fire access, and the fire trucks would have access to the site from School Street. if there wasn't the ring road, and if the church was closer to the street. So I think that requirement probably could be met from School Street without the ring road. But from my perspective, there's no green space for congregations to convene outside of the building. There's no lawn or no meeting space for people to sort of pour out of the front door and convene in a sort of community-like setting. So I would think that would be important to your members. And you don't have architectural plans yet, so I think accessibility, the front door is going to have accessibility. I think it's not going to comply with building code unless it does, but I could be wrong on that as well. But at least from a philosophical perspective, I would think you would want your front door to be accessible. So so those are comments on design. And you mentioned, I just more of a just FYI, remember that remind your architect that Manchester is a stretch code community, which has more significant energy and requirements for a building of this type in terms of envelope, energy use intensity, fuels. And then a question for you is, what is the use of that future building?
I'll take it in that order. There is no known use for the accessory building. We visited a number of churches. We also talked with people who've been in the business of developing churches. And we learned and we were advised that we should plan for growth, even if it never happens. So that future building site, we would like to, if we get to build the church and the fellowship hall, we would like to do the grading on that site and have that as outdoor green space for the near term. And if a building use ever comes to the forefront among the members of the church, and if we're able to raise the money to build it, then we would want to proceed with that. But there's no certainty that that would ever happen. We're simply putting it in there as a placeholder for potential future use.
So it seems that if we were to grant the special permit, that we would want to constrain that use to protected Dover Amendment uses, because if it was rented out as a disco or a gaming parlor, whatever,
that's what we're going to do.
it would not be subject to Dover protection. So
and to that point, the members of the building team spent a lot of time talking about this, and we could not come to a consensus over those 7 to 8 months that we talked about it. We could not come to a consensus as to what would be the best use. And so therefore there is no best use, but we're putting it in as a placeholder. And we all agree that any use, if it were to happen in the future, would have to be complementary and not competing with our use of the property on Saturdays and Sundays. So it would have to be complementary for parking purposes and complementary to our mission. So there's no certainty it would get built, but on the chance that it does, we're putting in a footprint to show that. What was the other thing I was going to say?
Green space.
Oh, well, yeah, the green space, as I said, the noise on School Street from the curb to the first 60 feet is incredible. I don't think people are going to linger out front because the noise effect is very disruptive. Right now, our church is at 20 School Street in Manchester by the Sea. And people, we just open after the worship service is over, we open up the front doors. We have a foyer area where people, stand and talk, and then people stand out on the sidewalk. And in that area of School Street, which is the downtown village, the traffic volume and noise is very tolerable. But up at 189-193 School Street, the traffic noise of cars leaving the village and accelerating north to go either to the highway ramps or up to Essex is really not conducive to be standing outside having a relaxed conversation. So we would envision ourselves, either going down to the lower level where we would have, meeting space, open the doors, using the back of the property, and then using that green space area where we have a potential future building footprint if we wanted to be out on grass.
Christina, Mary, Chris.
So yes, I
comments?
do have just a few comments, reiterate everyone. I thought they were great
Christina.
comments. I think the idea of dropping people off at front will happen inevitably. And my concern is actually even on the other side and trying to cross School Street, dropping on the opposite side. I mean, do we need some kind of an improved crosswalk there? I agreed. And that's right near the intersection for the highway. There's already several fender benders there. I did read the traffic report, and I know the traffic report quoted state accident reports, but Mill Street is a very concerning street in Manchester. It's been cited for speeding. There's, off-roading there. It's not a wide road. So my concern is that it is narrow. It barely meets what was suggested. So I think before and after, there needs to be some kind of calming and a queue, because if you're trying to come in from School Street and go to Mill, there seems like there's going to be some kind of a traffic jam getting out of the church on a Sunday morning. So what happens then? So then does the traffic begin to back up on School Street if people are blocking Mill, is my concern. Did you guys follow me there? And then my other final point was the first rendering of the building showed a steeple spire. I just would like to know what kind of lighting would be that you have planned for that.
Could I jump in with regards to
David.
the traffic? Please, apologies about earlier, had a minor technical difficulty, but I am back. School Street up until about the southern property corner is owned and jurisdictional to the Mass DOT. We can't just add a crosswalk without having a warrant there. And certainly the idea that potentially somebody may drop someone off across the street and try and cross it would absolutely not trigger any of the 9 Mass DOT warrants. So that is DOT jurisdictional. That's just not going to happen. And then with regards to the lighting on the steeple, I don't have any input on that. Alden, do you have any input? I'm not sure.
No, it has not come up at all.
So my second point was Mill Street and backing up and overflow onto School Street. So Mill Street is not state DOT, and there has been several conversations, several traffic calming actions taken on Mill Street. So it is a concerning street in town. So if the cars are blocking coming out of the parking lot and people are trying to come in from School Street, they're going to back up into a pretty dangerous area, where the highway meets. So that's my concern. I can see people trying to leave the church on a Sunday morning and people trying to get wherever they're going on Mill Street and not being able to get there. So I'm just wondering how we can prevent and, increase that flow.
I'm sorry, where are we concerned about the traffic backing up?
So if people are leaving the parking lot,
Okay.
taking a left, trying to get to Wenham,
Yep.
and people are trying to get to their homes down Mill Street, if they're blocking that, it's not that far of an area, right? It's pretty close.
Oh, you're asking what's the distance between
Yeah.
center line of the access drive and the edge of Mill Street?
The edge
No,
of
I'm just
School
saying, how
Street.
many cars are gonna be,
Yeah,
Queuing up.
yes. If Mill Street was blocked, how many cars could fit before the blockage occurred?
I mean, sorry, how many cars could fit down Mill Street or down the access drive?
Mill Street.
I believe the traffic report says that it's over 150 feet. So several.
Okay,
But also you got to bear in mind, we're talking about maximum 60 vehicle trips to this one-way vehicle trips to this site. And people tend to leave in sort of like a bell curve. Not everybody leaves at once. Some people might leave early. Some people might leave right after service. And I'm sure, as Alden can certify, most people will kind of linger, talk, and sort of disperse at a leisurely rate.
Except in January.
But it is, quite a way, so several cars could queue up there. I mean, like I said, it's over 150 feet.
okay, thank you.
May I just comment on that? We have had a conversation about our desire to be good neighbors and not to inconvenience cars coming off of School Street that need to go, east on Mill Street. And so we would certainly train ourselves and self-police ourselves. And if we had to put up a little sign on our driveway, reminding people exiting our property not to block Mill Street. And, if we ever get past COVID where we can have coffee hour again, that really stretches out the people exiting. People tend to linger quite a long time. So we would not be, like stampeding the driveway and stampeding to exit on Mill Street.
One final question. I know I'm a member of Resurrection and we have a crosswalk in front. Do you have a crosswalk in front of your church on School Street?
At present, we do not.
Okay.
There's crosswalks at each of the intersecting side streets as you go away from the village. But there is no side street coming right at our church building at number 20 School Street. So there's no need to be crossing there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Mary or Chris only, any comments before I open this to the public?
I have a few comments.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think this is a very tricky design question. And I think you probably heard the other board members. I think I'm going to try to articulate the town's point of view in this. If you're coming to town, this building for a lot of people is going to be the first thing they see. And they'll be coming off the ramp and pulling up, and there'll be a church right in front of them. And if the church looks like it's not belonging to the neighborhood, it's going to sort of make people uncomfortable. And I think what Gary and Laura and Sarah, actually all of us are trying to convey to you is that we want this church to feel like it's part of the community, of the neighborhood, that it's not just stuck out in a loose lot. But I understand the safety concerns you have, and the fact that the parking is in back of the building and not in the front is kind of a complication. That so when people leave the church, do they go down out the back door instead of the front door and get to their car?
Yes.
And if that's the case, maybe they park their car and then come in the back door to the front of the church.
I foresee most people exiting out the back to their cars. Yeah. But right now, we've done a census of our current members, and there's a handful, 8, 10, 12, who currently walk to church. And of those who are currently walking to our church at 20 School Street, most but not all would probably walk to a new location. The new location is slightly further for people to walk than our current location. So I think there might be some drop off in the number of pedestrians from among our current members.
Mhm.
who actually walk to church. And this is going to take a long time. We're all getting older.
I
Well,
hope you're
that's certainly
hoping for
true.
younger members with strollers too, to walk up from town and push their strollers in the front door.
Actually, well, I agree with you, but actually, I think most parents with little ones put them in car seats and they drive.
I disagree.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
So, but part of this
Uh,
might just be a sleight of hand. You want, maybe the front of the church has to look like it's appealing to local pedestrians. But most people, if you're right, they'll just drive around the back of the church and park and go in the back door anyway, so. But on the other hand, if you encourage them too much to stop on School Street and go in the front entrance, then that's what they're gonna do unless you have a pull-off on the shoulder, which allows them to safely get out of their car without obstructing traffic. You know, I understand the conundrum you're in. I just hope you understand that the town is wanting to preserve, you know, the way Wenham wants to preserve its downtown too. It's the same kind of issue. You want to look like a village and not a suburb.
Thanks, Chris. Mary, anything before we go to the public for any comments?
Yes, I do.
Right,
I
yes, Ms.
want,
Foley.
thank you. I was looking at the transportation impact assessment, and I wanted to get a better understanding of the numbers and the traffic and all of that. So it looks like the proposed building is twice the size of the current church, yet the traffic numbers were kind of staying the same, the trip generation. So I would hope you're anticipating that maybe things would grow, thus the trips would increase. And so I want to know if these are real numbers for us to be looking at, that you'd only see about 50 cars pulling in on a Sunday. That's my one question. And then also, I mean, I know you don't know what that outbuilding would be, but if we could try to extrapolate some sort of numbers for that, what that would generate, because if I'm looking at the traffic report and it's looking about 50 vehicles, yet you have parking for 98. So I'm trying to match them up and hoping you can kind of help me see that more clearly.
Well, we would very much like to grow to need 98. Right now, we have about 10 to 12 parking spaces on the grass behind our current church building. And the rest of the cars park at that craft parking lot next to the fire station. We put 12 cars in there. The owner has been very kind and generous to us to allow that. And a handful of people park behind town hall, and the rest of the people find places on the curbs. And I'm sure that the people in the surrounding neighborhood of where we are right now would be very happy if we moved up to 193 School Street and stopped taking curb spaces. You know, I don't know what to say. It is a conundrum. You know, School Street does have some design challenges to it. It has safety challenges. It has noise challenges. You know, we all appreciate very much how important this location is, because it will be the first building that people see when they come off of Route 128 off of exit 50. And so we're very mindful. We had hours and hours and weeks and months of conversations about where we wanted to propose to put the building. We had all kinds of setback options as far as 180 feet, 120 feet. And we agreed that 60 feet would be much better from an aesthetic point of view, and it would still allow a one directional driveway around, but it wouldn't be right on the sidewalk. So I think what we've presented is a good balance among some challenging design factors. There's also in the traffic report, it has to be noted that our maximum traffic count at our current location is about 60 cars. And right now, about 45 of those cars come off of Route 128 and they drive down School Street into the village. So if we were located up at 193 School Street, then there'd be 45 fewer cars coming down School Street into the village every Sunday morning, because cars coming right off the highway and cars coming out of the village would have a place to park. So
I guess my question was, if these traffic numbers are really true case scenario for now a 9,700 square foot building with another potential outbuilding, if you're really looking at only 50 to 60 vehicles coming in, if that's really what we should be looking at when we're analyzing, because it seems like it would be more.
oh, thank you. I misunderstood what you were expressing, and I apologize. It's true. The footprint of what we're proposing is approximately twice what we have right now, because right now we don't have a fellowship hall. So what we're proposing is a sanctuary building on the southern piece of that footprint, and then the fellowship hall would be closer to the highway. So it's the same population, it's the same people, two different functions. So that on a Sunday that we were going to have a lunch afterwards, after the worship service, those cars would just sit in the parking lot and we'd have a lunch together. So it's not doubling the seating, it's having an additional fellowship hall use.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I think you've heard from the planning board. Sue, any comments before we go to the public? It's Town Planner Sue Brown.
Thanks, Ron. I just had, mine was a technical question that the assessor wanted me to ask. Are you planning to merge the lots at some point?
Well, I'm not qualified to answer that, so I'm going to ask David or Carlton to advise us on what's the best course of action.
No, we're currently not. It's 3 lots, adjacent lots under common ownership. It's basically treated as one large lot. There is no plan or requirement to do that.
Okay, and so maybe the next question is moot then, which is, so are you putting the structure on, that's going on multiple lots though, is it? Or is
That's
it?
fine. Yep, and that's fine. We've done that
Okay.
before. You can
Yep.
place a property line right through the middle of a building, plop a building right on top of it. It's as long as they're adjacent under common ownership, it's thought of as one large plot of land. And the best example is with like a subdivision, when you have like 3 large pieces that are together under common ownership, and you might take it and carve it into 20 different lots or whatever, what have you. But there's no need, no requirement, and we're going to keep it the way that it is, because there's no net benefit or.
Okay. Then her question was, do you have a preference on the number that she uses to identify? It's a little troublesome to call it 189, 90, 193. So she's trying to clean up some books and was wondering what to call that in terms of an address, if you have a preference.
We haven't thought about it, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Usually that would come from the assessor's office. So if they want to tell us what it is, I don't think that's an issue.
She was just asking if you had a preference. Thank you. She's retiring in 2 days, so she was just cleaning it up for
God
the
bless
next
her.
person in.
Yeah,
That's it.
God bless her.
That's all I wanted. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Before we figure out our next steps, anybody from the public wishing to speak?
Ron Sarah
I
has
had
her
one
hand up
more
there.
comment if I could.
Okay, I was going to let the public speak, and then we'll get back to planning board. Jeff Delaney, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Jeff Delaney, 10 Ancient County Way. I just wanted to express my serious concern about the access road tying into Mill Street. I don't know how many of you travel that road on a regular basis, but I use it every day, and it's dangerous as it is now, especially in the wintertime. I mean, it's very hard to see. With all the frontage of this property on School Street, it makes sense to me for the access road to be on School Street, and I just hope that the planning board takes a serious look at how safe that access road is now, the way it's currently planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. See no other public with their hand up. I will ask Sarah to make a comment or a question.
Twofold. One is I was going to suggest that we have a site walk, because I too have some concerns about the sight lines on Mill Street. And I think a site walk is, at least would help me with now with the plans. But maybe that's not necessary for others. And then also in terms of the parking counts, twofold. One is whether the overflow parking might, instead of being any kind of impervious, if it might be an even more pervious kind of surface or a greener surface. There are mats you can put down underneath to stabilize the area when then you grow grass on top of it. An example of that is the parking at Mistlewood at Endicott, if you want to see it. At the entrance, the parking there on the right has that type of parking. And then the parking counts and the traffic study, I think we should be mindful of the peak concerns. Maybe the solution is a detail for those peak things. I'm thinking, some esteemed planning board member has having a memorial service, and everybody is very fond of planning board members. So there's a huge crowd, and we get a lot of cars for that service. I'm sure that would happen based on our esteemed work. But nonetheless, I think the issue is the parking, the traffic is those peak days or Christmas, those holidays, Easter. Those are the days that we're most concerned about the traffic on Mill Street and what's going to happen for safety. Those we're not worried. I don't think I'm worried about the weekend morning peak hour.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Laura, is that a fresh hand or was it?
Yes, just one comment. It didn't come up before, but it became apparent as we were talking about the projections for parking and the future building, which is a use yet to be identified. I could see if the applicant would be willing to consider some efficiencies of the land that they're clearing and grading and leveling. If you could consider the building space, the building footprint, the future building footprint, and the future parking for another almost 40 cars that you don't currently have a projected need for, then you could also save some money, limit the grading, and make a smaller footprint of development on the site. Again, I just think we're being asked to support a lot of projected growth that we don't really see the need for yet.
Mr. Chair, may I comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Drake, go ahead.
Thank you.
Go
Yes, Ms. Tenney, we had conversations about this. The earliest site plans that we got from the engineers were, very traditional paving and very traditional stormwater drainage and management ideas. And we very quickly kind of pushed back on that because we're not that big. And then we also visited other churches, and we talked with leadership at other churches of all different denominations. And there was a consensus that we were told, and that is get as much parking potential on your site as you can reasonably do, because you do have those special events. And we're keenly aware of how hazardous School Street is. We would never want to park. You can write this down in the minutes. We would never want to park on School Street. It's just asking for problems. So we do have a desire to get we like the idea of 98 spaces. I don't know the exact distribution between the concrete grass pavers versus the permeable pavement. But whatever the distribution is, it seems like a good fit for now and for growth. So I think we're reluctant to give up parking spaces because if you only need them, 3 or 4 times a year and you don't have them, you really are going to miss out. Because we certainly don't want to park on Mill Street either. The gentleman from Mr. Delaney, who lives a little further down, he's absolutely right. There's no safe parking on Mill Street. So we don't want to become a burden on Mill Street or School Street for parking events.
Understood. And the building footprint is simply a footprint on paper now. So if you
Yeah.
overlaid the building footprint on the 98 spaces, you would have those 98 spaces of overflow to park on until such time as you develop a second building. And at that point, you can talk to us about the uses and, what parking requirements there are for that. We're just commenting about the kind of, all of the separate pieces add up to a large footprint, perhaps larger than you need.
Yes, Ms. Tenney, are you suggesting that maybe we would be allowed to forego the construction of the overflow for a period of time until we needed it?
I think that would have to come before the town. I'm simply saying that if you have 98 spaces and you're projecting for when you build the second building is some years out, then you've got those 98 spaces. There's only a footprint of a building. There's no building there.
Right.
And then when you knew what the building use was, then you could reevaluate whether you actually do need the 98 spaces or something less than that.
Oh, but the footprint for the future building does not overlay any of the proposed 98 parking spaces.
Right, it's right. It doesn't now, and I was suggesting that it could, so that you could.
Oh, thank you. I'm not as smart as I look. I didn't pick up on that.
I'm sorry if I didn't state it clearly enough, but that was
Thank
my
you.
suggestion, that you overlay the two and allow yourself the parking until you build the building when you reevaluate.
I guess we'd have to think about that.
Yeah.
But thank you for making that clear. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I just say something quickly about the parking? This parking includes everything that's shown on site. There's no calculation for the use of religious services in the Manchester zoning bylaws. It says the number of parking spaces shall be adequate to accommodate all normal demand determined by the building inspector with advice of the planning board. We're incorporating both buildings. And if you look at the traffic report on a typical Sunday morning, although there's 97 total trips generated entering and exiting the site, there's only 46 entering between peak hours and 51 exiting. So we're talking about 50 spaces on a peak Sunday, 50 to 60, and we have 98.
Yeah.
Exactly. So your parking is quite a bit oversized to the need that you're stating.
But we just said that we're worried about not having enough parking on if a planning board member were to pass away and have religious services there. We need to accommodate those maximum numbers. And as engineers, we always accommodate for the worst case scenario, not the typical scenario. We expect 60. If a beloved planning board member should unfortunately pass away, we have 98 spaces there, which would accommodate all vehicles on site and not
again, because we do not, again, I have to
park up
we
and
do
down.
not want to park on School Street. We do not
Understood.
I just want to make sure everybody.
Okay, let me interrupt. Look, we're getting, we've been on, we're past our time right now. So what I would like to do is continue this hearing. I think the board would like to hear from the other boards, the DPW. I don't know if the Concom has an NOI on this.
We did submit today an NOI to the Conservation Commission.
Okay, great. So I think what I'd like to do with the permission of the applicant is to continue the hearing. I think if board members want to take a site walk, I think that's a good idea. We should schedule that. Maybe have a representative from Cornerstone meet us out there on a, I don't know, Saturday morning or what, it's the hours are getting dark now, but Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if you all pick a day and a time and let me know, we'll do everything possible to accommodate that.
Okay. Any members have a suggestion on a date? I know, unfortunately, the planning board has a lot on its plate between now and mid-November. We're asking members to do a lot, but I'm hoping members would be able to find a date to convene. Anybody want
Ron,
to
could
throw one up?
we possibly take that offline just to find a date so we don't take up time here? Maybe
Okay.
send an email around. Everyone's got
Okay.
complicated calendars. We certainly want to make it possible to meet with Mr.
Right.
Drake.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to continue the public hearing to, I don't think I want to continue it to our next meeting, but maybe a meeting subsequent down the line, because I think we have a lot on our plate next week, next meeting. Meeting with the selectmen, I think on the 4th and the 12th, about November 8th.
Second that motion, Ron.
Who seconded that?
All right, Gary, and I second to move it to that date. What is it, October?
I said November 8th.
Oh, sorry, November 8th.
That's pretty far down the line. Is that okay with the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're agreeable to that.
Let's please do a site walk between now and that meeting. So sometime in the month of October, that would be appreciated. I think it'd be productive for the next meeting.
Okay, we'll get a date.
I'm sorry, but you have to have a time certain. November 8 at what time?
7 o'clock,
7 o'clock,
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
So I'll take a motion to continue the public hearing to November 8th and at 7 p.m. Is there
Moved. I move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call. Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert,
Yes.
Mr. Olney,
Yes.
and Ms. Tenney.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. So we'll see you on November 8th, and we'll see you sooner on some site visit in the future. We'll let you know. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for
public,
having
partic-
us. Yes.
Yeah, good luck with your project. We'll continue this down the road.
All right, we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
good
you.
night.
You too.
Okay, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like, Sue, if you can bear with me, is postpone the discussion table LCD and your planners report again. I want to just close up this recodification. I think we had a few things left. If it's okay with you, Sue, on that, I think it's gonna, this LCD might get into a lengthy discussion.
I'm hopeful that it won't, but I would, as long as we can cover it tonight. I have a consultant standing by. I would really love to give him some direction.
Tonight on the LCD?
I would like to. There's certainly been adequate time to look at my memorandum and consider it, and maybe folks have a clear direction of whether they want to take my recommendation or to adjust it.
Okay, why don't you go ahead with it then?
I mean, I don't mind doing it after the recodification finishes, but I would love to get to it tonight.
Okay. Sarah, do we have anything left on the recodification? And Chris?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Well, I think we do. We, so, just to go back, to the, sorry. I'm assuming that we have agreement to stick with the renumbering and the deleted section. We have to tidy this up. The question is what to do with the other two sections, the replace sections 1 through 4 and the new administration section, given Alan's comments. In thinking about it in the last few minutes, while the other material was going on, my suggestion, I guess, would be that we maybe have another working session and maybe invite the town moderator to talk through this and explore maybe some partial ways to get it. Oops, sorry, this one, particularly on 1 through 4, the partial, either just definitions or just section 4, to try to accomplish something of substantive at this meeting, at least keep it alive. And we can always pull back, but you can't pull back. If we pull back now and, or at least keep the decision alive until the hearing, but have a posted committee working session to really hash through the various options. So that'd be my suggestion.
Would you think Bobrowski would be a valuable use of his time to participate in that if it was less under an hour?
I think it's more of a political conversation with Alan, and maybe then we're scheduled to meet with the selectmen in a week, right?
I was actually, now that you bring that up, I don't see Becky on, but Ann Harrison, do you know if you guys are scheduled to meet with us next week?
No, I'm sorry. I have no idea.
Okay. Sue, do you know if that's been pushed to the Board of Selectmen for next week?
I don't know about the Board of Selectmen, but I do know Mr. Bobrowski is out of the country until like the 8th of October, so he's not available for that.
So I think that from my perspective, the question is really whether or not we want to, whether we can convince the town moderator to support our efforts to do something substantive, or whether we want to try to do a piece or all of what we've been working on against his recommendation. So those are kind of, I think, where we're at. And I feel like we got a lot of really good conversation when we met in person. And I'd be willing to organize a similar meeting. Maybe we need to post tomorrow if we're to maybe meet Thursday in the same time frame we did before, which is 5 p.m. or we could do 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. whatever people want, would be one possibility. I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I also think that no matter what, we should probably go ahead with the public hearing, because why not?
Oh, absolutely.
I
Well,
don't think,
yeah,
I think,
why,
you know,
certainly we have to have a public hearing for the renumbering and the deleted sections.
well, we might as well go through as much of it as we can get through. It's not going to hurt anything.
Well, this is the issue here. If we hold the hearing on an article that we pull from the warrant, does it affect the ZBA?
Well, I guess we should ask the question.
Yeah, we've
Let me see if it's, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
So the answer to that is no.
Okay.
That it will not affect that. The only thing that would affect the ZBA is if we change something in the use table that is currently a yes to an or special permit to a no, or something that's currently a no to a yes or to special permit. So provided that we're not making any of those changes, nothing that we're presenting will affect a application to the ZBA.
Okay. So then maybe Chris is right. We go ahead with the hearing, in which case I still think we need a working session to kind of, we got exhausted last week.
Yeah, no, we should definitely have the working session.
I think that's the next step on those, particularly on the section 1 through 4. We're going to need to do that for April anyway. We're going to hash through those changes that we want to see in section 4 particularly. So we walked through the definition in the
worst case, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, we walked through the definitions in the working session. I think I think the edits that I have put in the proposed article reflect those discussions, which were minor edits. But section 4 needs some additional work. So I propose a working session, and hopefully we can get it on a time that at least, 3 or 4 people can come. And so that would be, I think that's a good next step.
Yeah, and then the worst case, we just have to have another public hearing in the spring, which is, we're probably gonna do anyway, so.
Right, so we'll get it.
you know,
We'll be
at
well
least
ahead.
we get some feedback, which will be good.
Okay.
All right, are you proposing Thursday, Sarah,
Um,
or next week?
Thursday works, well, I'd be good if we might meet with the town, with the Board of Selectmen. I think it would be good to have worked through this before that.
need
So
to
I
confirm
could
that we're
also do
meeting.
it before the Board of Selectmen meeting, if that's better, you know, if you want to meet at 5 on Monday.
We could do that, we could, how about Saturday morning? Is that possible?
That's not great
Not
for me.
good?
Ron, Mary, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Ms. Foley?
So, just a question to, I guess, Sarah and Chris, that I pulled down the draft planning board articles from Sarah's email. So is that the working document?
Yes, I
Okay,
believe so. But no, there is a compilation that went onto the website. But the one that we should comment on are the 4 separate documents in the, that are our working documents, as we have been doing all along.
okay, so that's kind of my question, because I guess I'll just put my comments in SharePoint, because my understanding of what was discussed last week, there's still things in here that weren't taken out, and then there were actually some things added, so I'm not really sure where those came about, and I can just comment in SharePoint, so I feel like we still have to cull through these documents.
Yes, you're right. We still need to, that's why we need another working session.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, it's, this isn't a clean, we're just, renumbering and, this is changes.
Okay, point out those, maybe we can look at that.
Yeah, I'll put it in SharePoint.
Okay, but that's a good point, and I'll send an email right after this meeting to remind everybody. Use the 4 unique documents that are each titled PB1, an article for renumbering, PB2, article for deleting, PB3, replace sections 1 through 4, so that those are our official, our working documents, as opposed to the document that is the compilation and was placed on the website. Okay, so can people make it, or enough people make it on Thursday? Chris, Mary, others?
What
Gary?
time?
Yeah, can we do
What were you
it, can we do
thinking?
it a little earlier than 5? Can we do it at 4:30?
I think 4:30 works.
I cannot do it. I'm going to be out of town for a few days.
I think I could do 4:30.
Yes, I can do 4:30. I can even 4, if that's better.
I could 4.
If we do 4:30, then people who can only make it not till after 5 can still join, or even after 5:30. So why don't we
Sure.
post for 4:30? Gail, I will send you an email with the agenda for this meeting.
Okay,
All right. Great. And Sue, can you get a room?
I can do that. I'm in town hall tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we'll go for that, and we'll try to really hash through those final changes and plan to have these all discussed at the hearing, and then figure out what we're gonna do for town meeting.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's it for tonight. Great.
Yeah, I
Well,
want
we
to
have
thank
the
you.
cricket article. Has anybody seen the cricket article?
Right.
Looking it over. Haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it's great effort. Thank you.
I did, Chris.
It
You
looks
want
really
just my-
good. I just haven't read it in detail.
Great. So that needs to go in by
Tomorrow evening.
tomorrow morning,
Tomorrow
9:30.
morning.
At 9.
So
So-
I can make that
I have
happen.
a couple comments.
Okay, you want to send them to me, Mary, and I'll stick them in?
Sure.
I thought it was great.
Thank you.
Chris, I typed some comments into what I got on the, I don't know if they were live comments or did you see any changes in the document?
I can look.
I only see a comment from Sue so far. A clarification
Sue had a
comment.
very good comment.
Did it say I disagree?
It was just a clarification.
And the
It wasn't
changes,
poking at it.
the changes that I made were, I highlighted in yellow. So Bobrowski's spelling and different things, because I didn't see that. I didn't know, I didn't want to change yours without tracking it. And I wasn't quite sure how it would show up. So anything in
So,
yellow is,
I have a question for you. So do you want your name in it? I stuck it in there and then I thought maybe you wouldn't want to be named in it. So,
I can't remember the context. I don't mind.
okay.
Does the town planner, Sue Brown, have carefully reviewed the existing bylaw, come up with a series of initial recommendations to be presented for
Oh.
consideration?
I was
That's
one.
all.
I was one of the group. Yeah, that's
You're one of
Yeah,
a
you're one
larger
of the group,
group.
but I
Yeah.
don't have,
perfectly fine.
I don't have Sarah Mellish named or,
Oh, then there you go. So just leave it out. Just leave
Yeah.
it generic.
Yeah,
Building enforcement officer or whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
you did more than
Perfect.
she did, but that's okay.
So Gary, to get your comments, can you summarize them in an email to Chris? That might be the best thing to do. Or to,
I don't know how that shared document works. I opened it up, I typed in some changes thinking they would somehow be highlighted in a color or something.
Add
They weren't.
changes.
And then I exited and I don't know if I changed the document or what.
Well, why don't you send them to me anyway?
Yeah, Chris, check and see if the document has different wording than you had put in it. Because that's what I thought too. I was typing mine in, it looked like they were live. It seemed like they were changed. But I couldn't, I don't know how you would know if I didn't highlight them. Unless
You
you
should
You
highlight
edit
it.
in
Read it
reviewing as
carefully.
opposed to editing mode, then it should, you can have the modes are edit, review, or viewing. And if you edit in review mode, then I believe Chris or the author can see, we can all see the comments without erasing the original language.
So edit it in review mode?
Yeah. I think I'm getting into SharePoint myself, but I believe that's how it works so that you don't delete the information that was under there, but shows up as like a strike through or a comment.
Right, that's what I
Exactly.
didn't want to
Yeah.
happen. Okay, edit in
Yeah.
review mode. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I've got a little to learn.
Me too. SharePoint is not the easiest thing to navigate around.
yeah, the yellow comments are showing up.
Yeah, just the highlights. Yep.
Yep. So Gary, just look at it, make sure your comments showed up and or highlight them or email us. What you do is you close back out and then you go back and see if they're there. That's the best way to do it. Okay. Maybe we'll just add some language that, well, I think we'll just leave it and then it doesn't hurt. Now we can always back it back. So
I'll look at it after the meeting. I haven't had time to
sorry, I was
open anything.
Okay. Great.
But,
Thank you everybody for that.
I think it looks good. I'll read it after the meeting.
Okay, I think I'm done. I'm not sharing, right? Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're done.
Thanks for
No.
everybody.
Thank you, Chris, for writing that.
I want
Okay,
to
my
thank
pleasure.
all the board members stepping up on this. It's really great. All right, Sue, can we talk about the LCD?
I would love that.
Yeah.
So,
You want to share your screen? Do you need a share screen?
I'm not very good at that. Do you want to just bring up my memorandum? I mean, I could try.
Where is it?
Is it in this OneDrive? Or was
Yeah.
it earlier?
It was in last week's. I don't know if it got put in this week's as well.
No.
I can
See.
try if you want to give me permission.
I did. You have permission.
All right, let's see if I can do this.
Oh, 9.9 study guidance memorandum
Yes.
LCD.
Yes.
Okay, I can open that if you can, Sue. Pull it up.
Okay.
It's just opening the document.
I gotta make you co-host.
Okay.
everyone's co-host tonight.
Is this the right one, Sue?
It is.
Okay. So header, interoffice memorandum.
Perfect. Perfect. Right. You can stop right there. So I just want to, as you know, we had the different draft scenarios. We talked about them. We have MAPC's recommendations, and now what they want to do, we have, Sarah suggested that I kind of give some background, in particular for herself and Laura, who haven't been here, but also to remind everyone else that we started this project, a total of $50,000 worth of technical assistance. It was in 2 phases. MAPC, we completed phase 1, which was 10,000 worth of MAPC funds, 10,000 from the town. Phase 2 is 23,000 from EOEA and another 7,000 from MAPC. And this shows what was done in phase 1. Basically, phase 1 was the visioning, doing the parcel density, the data and district, sub-district summary info, doing a public meetings, doing the visioning, et cetera. Phase 2, we started with the zoning regulations and the design guidelines. We got that first draft of those, and those were presented. The rest of phase 2 was supposed to be an application to DHCD, which is a pretty technical application. But we stopped short of that because we knew we didn't believe we could get support for that. So we wanted to pivot and then craft our own guidelines or regulations and guidelines for a district. And so that's what we've done. We amended the scope to look at 3 different scenarios. We did that May through June at the cost of $11,500. So we have $7,000 left to write the zoning regulations and design guidelines for an overlaid district of our own making. And if you could, yeah, so I just wanted to put out there that I would recommend that we just ask MAPC to complete the draft zoning, and I call them draft zoning and not zoning guidelines because they're always draft until town meeting. So that's why I've used that word. It's not that they would be incomplete in terms of what we're getting, but they're drafts because they're not approved either by us or the town. So we ask them to complete some draft zoning and the design guidelines for the balanced growth scenario. And that was the scenario that they said was most feasible and most likely to get built. So some of the things that we wanted to give guidance on was how we wanted the uses to be balanced, to assure that it wouldn't all be commercial, or to be sure that it didn't only housing didn't go forward. And my suggestion is, let's have MAPC, let's have our consultants come back and say, what is the best strategy for assuring that there's a good balance of uses and that one doesn't outpace the other. And so that's what I would suggest we do. You could I put in some numbers there, but they're just a for instance. 70% of the built-in footprint must be commercial uses, for example. And if you think those are reasonable amounts, I could go with those numbers and say, based on here's what we think, and please set out these, draft these regulations using these numbers. I used a maximum number of residential units, and I put in the number 90 because that was the number that was offered in the balanced growth scenario that they put forward, which was a combination of the independent living units at for the assisted living and some workforce housing. I think those are the only 2. I've just regurgitated the uses that we said that we were most interested in having. And again, I think I should look to MAPC to say, do you think we should list out every use that we think is reasonable, or do we put, or is it better to say generally these type of uses, commercial uses, or we could say, but not these uses. So I think if we give them these direction and ask for their opinion on how to make the regulations most flexible and the most friendly to give the town the most control, then that's what I would recommend that we would do. So I would like the board's opinion on.
Any comments from the board? Gary, you have your hand up.
I support what Sue's proposing. I think a balanced growth approach is good. I think it leaves we have a whole bunch of variety of uses that we've flagged, and we just don't know what's going to come down the pike. We've discussed this before. Let them suggest how to balance it, because we're certainly going to want to see it balanced. I just think we should support what Sue's saying and go forward with it.
So I have a couple of comments also. Maybe a question actually first. So all of these uses would be by special permit. We're just allowing these by special permit. Is that not true? Or are some of them by right, like a recreational facility? Or
so I would say that they're by right as much as possible with site plan review. However, if there are some uses, for example, some of our discussion focused on the size of certain buildings or the number of units. So if, for example, we wanted to allow a 60-room hotel by right, but anything larger by special permit, we could do that. And that's guidance that we can give now, or that we can tweak as we get it back and as we think about it further. The same with housing. You could allow a certain amount by right, and the rest by anything else by special permit. And certainly you could allow something by right, but if it asked for an exception to the regulations that are put forth, either in the height for certain reason or anything else, then that triggers a special permit. But the hope would be to, in a best case scenario, you would have a certain number of uses that would be by right, because that is the most, I think it's the best way to really get someone to respond to the regulations that you're creating. If everything's, go ahead.
Well, this is an overlay district, right?
Yes.
So there are some uses by right in the existing LCD regulations.
Yes, and they
So we don't
always
have to-
have that.
Yeah, so those, we don't have to monkey with those.
Right, those are by right now, but if someone wanted to be by right, if someone wanted to go under this because it has very different, for example, site size and setbacks, if they wanted to go by that, even if it's a use allowed in the underlying zoning, they would need to go under the regulations for the overlay.
Okay.
And it would be hard to, I mean, the requirements for what we allow now is pretty egregious.
So the final thing, I think this is a great idea, and I think we should go ahead and do it. And getting some written regulations in front of us is going to help us. You know, we can jigger them after we get them.
Right.
So I'd love to see them on paper so we can then start arguing or discussing exactly what the details of this are going to be.
We want to give them specific numbers.
I don't think we should at this stage. I think we could, but I think they're going to be sort of in parentheses until we discuss it afterwards.
Right.
May
I agree
I
with
make a
you.
comment about that?
Yes, go ahead.
I agree. I'm supportive of this and the balanced growth scenario. I think that we shouldn't put any numbers or caps on anything yet, because it would be arbitrary and out of context without really understanding the scenario more deeply. So it might have unintended consequences. So I think we should just let the study kind of play out and come back to us, and then we can comment on it.
Ron, if I might,
Yes.
I also think we can move forward with this. I also agree that we should put sort of XX as where the numbers are and let MAPC give us some guidance. I would also just like to see them have a conversation with us before we have a final report. I feel sometimes that they come in at the end and are done and they've missed the mark, in some important way. We know the town better than they do. So even if it's a rougher draft at the end, I feel like having them come to a meeting and say, here are the things that you're going to need to think about and the pros and the cons, or do you think constructing the guidelines in this way or that way, there's pros and cons to that, or whatever, however they're, approaching it. I think an interim meeting with us will make a more successful outcome.
Are they here
Yeah, that's a
tonight,
good
Sue?
idea.
Agreed.
Is someone
No,
here tonight?
No. So so I guess my question to Sarah is when, I don't want us to go too far down the road. So when do you want to maybe have that conversation? Maybe after they've given some thought about, particularly, I think the most technical piece for me is how, and that we really need to think about is how they create that balance, how they don't let, how they keep it a true mixed use. So should we kind of, when in the process do we want to meet with them? When do we want to check in? If we give them guidance now to say, go ahead, when would you like to hear from them?
Maybe we should ask them when they think they should.
Short of final for sure, but how for short of final?
It's when they're making those determining, and there's got to be some decisions they make. I mean, maybe there's only one delivered approach, but my guess is there's probably some approach
Options, right?
as well as in my world, it's performance versus prescriptive
Right.
kinds of things. So that's, performance-based approach. I don't know if that exists in zoning. We tend to be very prescriptive. But if there is a performance kind of, goal-oriented approach, for example, I don't know if that's real, but and also
Well, it certainly is when you talk about zoning for, lighting and other elements like that.
Yeah, of course.
It's
Yes.
performance-based. Site can be as well.
Right.
Maybe they give us a draft and then we review it, then they come in and we discuss
Yeah.
What about options?
Yeah,
options.
They're doing some early
yeah,
options and we could look at
option
that and get some
draft,
guidance.
yeah,
yeah.
not a draft, but the options.
An
kind of.
option, yeah, an option scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay.
And did you tell us, was this in the memo, who is going to do this work?
So the person doing the work is Chris Kuchel. He's the MAPC consultant that's been working on it all along. He wasn't the lead. The lead left very unfortunately, right after the visioning, but he's been on it ever since the visioning portion has ended.
And he's spoken to us and he does a good job of presenting.
He does. Yeah, but
So
he's also pulled in other members of the economic development group to help him in areas, but he is the primary author and the one that speaks to us. And he's a senior planner. He's been there a while.
So is there a time constraint on this? Because we have a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, Sarah's recommended, I think, that we maybe push it out to like March. I know they were hoping to get it done by the end of the year, just because it's easier for them to plan capacity wise. But I think I can, technically, we have until June, but I wouldn't like to let it last that long. But I would agree to March to let us get through town meeting and the holidays, and then maybe dig in on this.
That sounds good.
Ron, can I make a motion so we can move
Yes.
forward on this? Because it's 9.
Ron, this is Mary. I haven't commented yet.
Yeah, let's just go ahead.
So I actually do not agree with this approach. I think that it's important to listen to what the residents had commented at the public forums, and they did not have an appetite for much housing up there. They definitely wanted to focus more on commercial. And so I think we're not really going in the direction that came out of those forums. So I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. Any other comments before Gary's motion? Gary?
So I guess my question is, what guidance are we
Christine,
giving them to make this what it was versus what it's going to be?
So my guidance is in the memo in regards to uses, in regards to affordability, in regards to number of units, but I've since gotten some guidance that says let's put a question mark or an X in the number of units, and let's craft it with that as an open option, which I'm fine
Well,
with.
my concern is exactly that. Are they just going to go back to where they started from, or are they going to listen to what the residents and what we've been saying is that we don't want the hundreds of units? So I guess to me, leaving it open at this point is just letting them kind of go back to where we started from. So without saying anything, I'm concerned that that's where we're going to end up.
So we're not, so we, first of all, they're not kind of driving the bus. They're just there responding to what we've asked them to do. So we've asked them to create a mixed use, and we put together some numbers, and they created some scenarios, and we've responded to them. So I think that I don't fully agree that the entire community said we don't want housing. I think there are a number of people that was bared out by our master planning process that said this should be a mixed village development here, and that we have more uses beyond just commercial needs, and that in particular, if one of the uses that we really want, and that's possible and probable, is an assisted living and housing unit up there, you absolutely don't want that to be a standalone, and you want to create housing and supportive housing and a supportive community around it, I believe. So I think that they have the guidance that they want, and I think it's responsive to what people have said, because they actually did the visioning for this. And I think they're following that. And I think their design guidelines clearly indicate that they listened and are following those parameters. So I think the number of units is open to debate. And I think we can
Yeah, I
get
think
there.
what they're going to say is if there's housing, not saying how much housing, but here are the regulations for what the housing should be. And if there's going to be an athletic club, these are the regulations for how that should be developed. And if it's going to be laboratory space, these are the regulations for how that's done. So it's not, we're not prescribing the amount of it. We're just saying how it should perform, as Sarah was saying.
And one of the key things here is we're asking them for suggestions on how to craft the mix of the uses, all of which we have control over. And I don't think it's constructive to this process because this has been going on a really long time. We've moved big steps away from hundreds of housing units. No one's talking about hundreds of housing units. That's really just disinformation, not helping the process. This is called balanced growth. It's one of the three approaches that we suggested a while back that were worked up, and we rejected a more intensive use of the site on purpose. So we can control the horizontal, we can control the vertical. I think that's quite clear on this, and we're asking them to give us a framework to be able to do that. I thought I made a motion earlier. I'd like to vote on it, that we allow Sue to proceed on the time frame she suggested and stop talking about this.
Wow.
Can I just ask Sue or Christine, are the public comments that you are referencing I'm looking on the website, the April 29th, 2001 and February 2nd, 2001 public forums, because it would probably be useful for Laura and me to listen to those recordings to get the input that Christine is referencing. Are those probably where they would be, Christine?
Yeah, you might. Oops, it might be in there, and I don't have them right in front of me, so I wouldn't know. But also there was a document that was that kind of pulls together the findings of the visioning process, so they would be in there too. And
but I'm particularly interested, sorry, in the the public hearings that were held, or the public forums and the comments that were received that are referenced. So, Christine, if those are not the forums that you're talking about, if you could send them to us so we can
No,
hear.
you have them. Those are the forums. Correct.
Okay, great. So then I'll listen to those. I'll send those to you, Laura, just so you know where they are. And anybody else, so that we can refresh our memory as to what the public had to say and across the board. That would be helpful.
Yeah,
me.
and to be clear, there have been many iterations of this, and they did start out with, I think it was 250 plus units of housing. So that's where we were getting the hundreds of units. And so it has kind of scaled down. And hopefully it's clear in the forums, but yeah, they're, you know, with all the other development proposals going on, it was a hard sell with more housing up there.
But I still think we could, I'm still in support of Gary's motion, so.
Okay, so
I'll
you're
second Gary's motion.
you're seconding Gary's motion.
I am.
Chris, you have?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote on moving forward with this. Ms. Creighton,
Didn't hear you, Sarah.
Ms. Creighton, we're,
You're muted.
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
I'm going to say no.
Ms. Foley,
No,
Mr. Gilbert,
Absolutely.
Mr. Olney,
Yes.
Ms. Tenney,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. So recorded 5-4, 2 against. Sue, you can move forward with that.
Thank you.
So the hour is late. We're almost to a new town planners report. In fact, next time we meet, it'll be the new month. So you could just refresh it and we'll do it then. How's that, Sue?
Sounds great.
Okay,
Things are moving
okay.
pretty slowly, so it hasn't changed much in a month and a half.
All right. Subcommittee and liaison reports. Anybody have anything on that? Have the new liaisons met or made any inroads with their
Not yet.
committees? Okay.
Not yet. I'll reach out to you, Sue, about getting connected to those folks.
And the only other thing is Gail got the minutes in today. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at them, but we can move to approve them at our next meeting.
Ron, could you also put the special meeting notes on there just so that we don't get behind? I also put those in the SharePoint. And I'm working off.
Oh, yeah, we looked at those already. I think, right?
Sketchy notes, and I didn't, it's not recorded. So if I missed anything, please send me anything
we-
substantive.
Okay.
you
All
send
right,
me.
Ready to
well,
vote on those or not quite?
Do we vote to approve those or do we just?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to vote. I think we can, I'm ready to vote.
I am too.
Okay,
Yeah.
for that would be a vote of the meetings that were held last week.
Mhm.
Right.
Motion to approve meeting notes of, can you give me the date, Sarah? Was it the,
September, I think it's September 20th and September 21st. And so September 20th would be myself, Chris, Gary, Christine, and Mary. So I move that we approve them as written.
I'll second that.
Okay, anybody against?
I have not read them yet, so I won't vote.
So why don't we just take a vote, a roll call? Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
who else went? Mr. Olney?
Mary and Christine were there.
I'll
Mr.
vote
Licio?
yes.
I vote that yes.
And Mary votes no, so.
And Gary was
go
there
ahead.
too. Gary was
And
there.
Mr. Gilbert,
I vote half a yes because I was at 1, not 2. I think.
Well, we're on the 20th right now.
we're on the 20th, when
Yeah.
you went to.
And then, okay, so it's,
And then on the 21st, motion to approve the minutes of the 21st. Anyone?
I'll move that. And it's everyone except Ron and Gary.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Sue, I had one spelling check on there.
Oh, yes, your name.
Recommended.
Okay.
Thank you. I got
Thank you.
that.
Thanks.
Motion to approve as amended. Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
I'll abstain.
and Mr. Olney,
Yes.
and Ms. Tenney.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay,
we've got
thank you,
those
Sue.
approved. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And the only thing I would note in the agenda, this joint meeting, it says October 3rd, that should say October 4th, which is the Monday. And I am not sure that the selectmen have us on the agenda for next, for Monday, but let's assume they do. And I would assume Chris and Sarah, you will explain to our fathers what we're doing.
Sure.
Is that correct? Sarah, you're on mute.
You'll check with Jeff to see if we're on the agenda?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all for all your hard work this past week. I know it's been a lot, and we're doing a lot. We're trying to get a lot done, and I really appreciate what everybody's chipping in and coming to the plate. So with that in mind, I like to hear a motion to adjourn.
So
Ron,
moved.
before you do that, sorry, we
Okay.
need to set a time for a site walk of Cornerstone Church, or people go out there on their own, whichever you.
Do that through the internet, Sarah, and because we all have to check our
Okay.
schedule.
All right, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I move we adjourn.
Seconded.
I move by acclamation that we're adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye,
See
everybody.
you in a week. Good night.
Good night.
All right, thank you. Good meeting.
Thanks. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Great job.
Good prep on those public hearings. That really,
Well,
okay.
that's Helene.
I'm gonna go eat something. Okay,
I
bye.
love her. Me too. See ya.